stage, where we're going to talk about floating cities for the next period of time here. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm not going to be able to enthrall you with my voice, as Davith just teased us with. So you'll be stuck with a sort of bland American version instead of the beautiful Welsh. We're really excited to have you with us on a discussion, a progression of some work that's been going on around floating cities among a number of partners, including Equinor, for several months at least, right, Margaret?
Yeah, we've been doing this since May.
Since May. Mm-hmm. And we'd like to start off by sharing a bit about the work that's been done so far from Margaret Mystery, who is leading innovation projects within the Global Strategy and Business Development Unit at Equinor. My name is, by the way, Rick Wheatley from Zinteo. I'll be sort of the dancing bear that's trying to keep us on time and get us through the agenda, which I'll share with you in just a moment. Margaret.
Thank you, Rick. Good to see you all. Thank you for coming. As Rick said, I'm working in the corporate innovation team in Equinor, and this journey all began 12 months ago, actually, with a conversation with Anastasia Malfi, who's the organizer of the Evolve Arena event. She called me up and said, "Margaret, have you heard about floating cities? And, don't you think this is something Equinor should look into?" And I had no idea what she was talking about. I knew nothing about the community in this space and all the great thinkers and doers in this area. But I thought, you know what, I have a mandate. I'm asked by Equinor to look at ideas and innovations that can move us beyond our current strategy, radical new business models. So I thought, yes, this is something my team should be looking into. So we started to work on this together with Zinteo using this approach, design thinking methodology. And our first step was to really explore widely and open up to a number of different partners, from architects to urban planners, real estate lawyers, naval architects, you name it. We had everyone with us, and we ran a series of workshops. And this exciting exploration culminated last week, actually, in a 4-minute pitch. We had just 4 minutes to summarize all the work that we'd done in the last 6 months. This was following a very successful innovation sprint that we had together with the best of our Equinor experts and the best of the partners that we've been working with, that took place in Oslo a couple of weeks ago. And together in that innovation sprint, we developed a value proposition around an idea called Smart Float. And it went so well, we were very happy with the result, and we decided to take the bold decision to compete in Equinor's innovation competition that took place last week. So we pitched our idea up against the very best ideas in Equinor's innovation pipeline. There were 10 ideas that competed, and I'm going to tell you what we pitched right now. I need my clicker. Hold on. Okay. So this is Smart Float. 5 billion people in the world today live in coastal cities, just like this one. This is Hong Kong. And governments and municipalities and developers of cities face the same 3 big problems: space, adaptability, and resilience to the effects of climate change. They're running out of space to grow. Today, They solve this problem using land reclamation. But land reclamation is costly, it's time-consuming, and it's dirty. We want to create space in a new way, using floating elements that allow cities to grow smarter. These are not just barges, they're integrated floating elements with waste, energy, and other services built in. By the end of the century, 25% of the global population will be living beyond the waterfront. And this represents a $40 to $100 billion market by the end of the century. It's a huge market. So how do we create value from this idea? It's very similar to how we do large energy offshore projects today. We enable, through stakeholder relationships and navigating the regulatory space, we develop large, complex marine projects. We lease the space, generating income and revenue. We operate safely. And then we enhance by integrating other innovations to the smart city. So there are 3 customers today who are looking for this solution. In Singapore, the government there are looking to create 100 square kilometres of new space by 2030. The city of Rotterdam creating a new floating building for the UN the Global Centre for Climate Adaptation, and that's going to be built in 2020. And the mother of Google, Alphabet, have just invested $50 million in the city of Toronto to develop a new smart quarter for Toronto, and they also need a floating partner. So let's focus on Singapore. It's a really important country, and they desperately need space. As I say, they're going to develop 100 square kilometres of new space before 2030. And they have 2 projects on the table right now, one floating energy project and another one developing floating space, which are expected to deliver returns by 2022. So we all know the global problems that we're facing: climate change and population growth. Elon Musk has a solution. He's going to move us to Mars. We think there's a solution much closer to home, and it's a space that we all know very well, especially here in Norway. It's the ocean. Thank you. So this was the pitch that we delivered last week in the competition. Unfortunately, we did not win support this time. But the idea, it was really important, we think, to get the idea in front of our senior Equinor executives and to sow the seed. I'm a really firm believer that we will see this vision materialise in the future. And I know that Jason is going to talk a little bit later about the importance of belief, the importance of having a great team, and the support to realise this kind of vision. Like I say, I've got the belief. I think everybody here does. We had a fantastic team working with us in Equinor to develop this idea to the point we've got to, and you can see some of the names up on this slide. Great cooperation from Sintef, from DNVGL, Water Studio, who you're going to hear from in a moment, Techno Creatives in the city of Rotterdam. And really most valuable part of the experience over the last 6 months has been working together on an innovative idea openly with a number of diverse partners. That's been extremely valuable, and I think we've all learned a lot from it. We're going to continue those partnerships and that cooperation. We're going to work on some of the individual opportunities that have emerged during the process. And we look forward to engaging with all of you in this community as we move forward with this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you. So this I think is an interesting example of what we at Zateo call problem-based innovation. You alluded to some of the challenges we're facing in terms of the population growth, what we see happening with climate change, the impact on rising sea levels, the movement of peoples to megacities around the world, many of which are pressed right up against the seashore. And then there's obviously the energy industry, which is experimenting and looking for pathways to diversification as well, other options and ways that the capabilities, the competencies, the technologies that have been so useful in developing offshore energy can be applied to other problems. And that's like a bit of a process.
Sure is.
Right? So we thought it would be interesting, it'd be interesting to just dive into that for a second. Some of you sitting in the audience might think, wow, it's cool that you and the team and the partners have been on this journey for the past several months, and it's a bit of a downer to hear that it doesn't get invested in right now, just before we do this work session today. But I think there's a bigger story there.
I agree. I mean, I think the big learning for me out of this process is that innovation, it needs to happen fast, but it also can go quite slow as well. The example I like to think of is our high wind floating wind technology. The story of that technology started, I think, over a decade ago. A couple of guys out on a sailing trip on the weekend who came back to the bar and thought about their experience on the boat and started to scribble on the back of a napkin. And it was basically the concept for high wind. But it took them another 10 years to get that thing built at scale in Scotland. And I think you have to stay with the passion and the belief in the idea, knowing that it can take some time to win everyone over.
Exactly. I think that's very true. And I think that if we had asked, I don't know, the CEO of Statoil 10 years ago, if Equinor would be one of the leaders today in floating wind, they might have told us we were crazy.
I think so.
Right?
Yeah.
And if we had said the company might have a different name in 10 years, they might have also said we were crazy.
Oh, yes.
Right? So I think there's the work that's been happening with Equinor has been so useful in helping that company conceptualize what they might be able to do in the future.
Mm-hmm. I think that's right.
Right?
I think getting radical ideas in front of people, getting them to expand their mindset and their thinking, it's an important step on the way. I've got a great colleague in the audience here, Sarah, who's working on floating solar, another exciting opportunity in the ocean space, and she's had a similar experience, I think.
Yeah, so it's important to never give up, Sarah. Are you prepared to give a speech also? Not quite yet? No. So,
she hasn't given up either.
No, good. So we'd love to hear about that later, and we're all absolutely rooting for you. We've got also some partners that have been very involved on this journey over the past several months who are prepared to share some detail about the things that are actually possible now.
Exactly. We have Cone with us from Water Studio, and when we think about the importance of involving a diverse range of partners, I don't think anybody in Equinor thought that we would be working very closely with architects, but they've been, Water Studio, the architecture firm, have been one of the most important and inspiring partners in this process. So looking forward to hearing from you, Cone.
Cool, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So just to riff off of that high wind story for a really brief moment before we introduce Cone. you know, the 1.5 or 2 degree scenario laid out by the IPCC depends on a lot more wind power than we can build on land. And it also depends on a lot more wind power than it's possible to build on shallow continental shelf around the world. There just isn't enough shallow continental shelf. So if we go back to this problem-based innovation thing again, the ability for us to install large quantities of wind power in deep water is a really big deal.